regrets. So
Okay.
we're good.
Okay, perfect. All right, let's get into it. So we'll call the meeting to order. It is 4:04 p.m. on Thursday, December 9th. And the first item on our agenda is adoption of minutes from our last meeting. Could I have someone to move and to second the adoption of the minutes from our last meeting, please? Thank you, Pedro, to move. Thank you, Mark, to second. Appreciate that. Any questions, concerns, additions, deletions to bring forward? And seeing none, all in favor of approving those minutes? That is carried. Thank you. Anyone with a declaration of pecuniary interest today? Seeing none, thank you very much. We now move to item 4 to adopt our agenda. So may I have someone to move into second today's agenda? Thank you, Pedro. Andre, you put your hand up. I know it wasn't for that, but I'm picking you. Appreciate it. Okay. Any additions or any comments, anything you want to discuss on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of today's agenda? That carries. Thank you kindly. Okay. Emily, we have the next item on our agenda, which is our 1-year feedback. So that's for you to share what comments or what information you wanted to share from everybody's participation in that.
Right. I will. Before I dive in, Donna, Andre, I just wanted to double check that you were able to figure out the closed captioning at the bottom of the screen. Perfect. Okay, good to know. Excellent. And for those as well, if anyone is interested, we do have closed captioning now as part of our meetings to hopefully make them more accessible. At the bottom of your screen, there's a live transcript option. So feel free to use that if you feel so inclined. With that, we'll move to the discussion of the survey results. So thank you everyone for taking the time to provide your feedback. As you know, this is year 1 for this committee. So we're learning a lot, and you know, we're excited to see where this goes in year 2. So overall, we've got some good ideas regarding the occurrence of the meetings. As it stands right now, we are going to stick with the monthly schedule. But one item that we wanted to bring up for discussion was there was a bit of a mixed overview of the timing for these meetings. So overall, there is an understanding that at 4 o'clock, you know, it is an okay time, but for some, even an hour earlier. We also wanted to put it out there that there might be interest in looking at perhaps having the meeting over the lunch hour. We're just hoping to ensure that when folks are in attendance, you know, we're able to have people present and contributing as best as they can, bearing in mind that, you know, we are in a virtual environment, so there are limits. So we wanted to put that out there, and I think I'll probably blend the results and the discussion together, Donna, if that's okay. So that was one of the points we wanted to bring forward first. So I'll maybe open that up for discussion right now, you know, about the timing. So is there, you know, any ideas about a preferred time that some folks would like to put out there?
Yeah, I'm one of the people that has a bit of a conflict with this time today. I don't.
Okay.
It's all related to childcare,
Yeah.
and grandparents can be great sometimes. So I don't have a conflict today, but I would probably, the time slot is available for me. If other time slots don't work for anyone else, I'll make myself available as best I can at this time. But if the others have a better suggestion, I'm open to the lunch hour period. Is not a problem for me.
Okay. Thanks, Fred, for that So maybe just turning this over to the rest of the committee. how do you all feel about the noon hour? Is that like a no-go? It depends. We are hoping to stick with that every second Thursday of the month. That seems to be okay overall. You know, we may not necessarily come to a consensus at this point, but we wanted to put this out there for discussion. Does anyone have anything to add to that?
I think for me, I have a little bit of flexibility as well. So if we did change it to the lunch hours, I'm sure most of the time that could work. So I can't say every time would work, but because typically I have lots of lunchtime meetings anyway. So if we book it far enough in advance, though, I should be able to block my calendar.
And that's what we're intending to do. We are hoping to put out the invites for 2022 as soon as we can, to make sure that it's in everyone's calendars well enough in advance.
I was going to say I'm in a very similar boat. If it's booked in my calendar, then I should be able to make it. So either or is fine with me too.
Either one is fine for me, but are we still planning to stick to exactly an hour? Or because if we go over an hour, then it's harder at lunch hour for me. That'd be the only thing. It's easier to go over an hour at the end of the day than at lunch hour.
Right.
Yeah.
Lunchtime is definitely not good for me.
So is there an opportunity, because, you know, we want to, in this discussion around this that we were having, Emily and I and Travis, we want to make sure that everybody, you know, has the time to participate and they don't feel rushed and they're able to, you know, eventually, you know, fingers crossed, we'll be able to get back to meetings in person. And so does moving up the time to a little bit earlier help? You know, if we were to go to 3:30 or 3 o'clock or whatever, I know for Fred, it's a bit of a challenge. Is there anyone that cannot manage that little bit earlier time, just so that people can, you know, not, as I said, so we'd go from 3 to 4:30, or we can continue and go from 4 to 5:30. Any thoughts on that?
I have a conflict. I have a meeting every Thursday, every second Thursday, the same at 3 o'clock every month. So if it's the first Thursday or the third one, then I'm okay. But 3 o'clock is fine with me.
Okay. Okay. I'm not seeing anyone else with go ahead, Fred.
I was just going to say 3 o'clock could work for me. I have to pick up my son at daycare at 5, so I have to leave to go there before then. That's why I always end up having to switch from computer to phone, and then I kind of miss out on a lot of the conversation. So, but a little bit earlier is doable, as long as it's in my calendar and nobody can book over it. It should be okay.
Right.
A little earlier is better for me too, for similar reasons.
Okay.
But I can, if 4 o'clock is the best, I can make it work, similar to Fred. Just earlier might be a little easier for me.
Okay. Okay, Emily, how about we take that back and we mull over, you know, the choice of the Thursday versus the time and all of that. Fred, I can tell you, I think many of us have been in the position that you're in, you know, we know what it feels like. I'm sure not everyone, but we know what it feels like. For me, it's a very long time ago. But you know, you have to work within those boundaries that are set for our family. So we certainly appreciate everyone contributing and making themselves available and being like present during the time that we want to cover things. So let's take that back, Em and Travis, and see what we could do with it. Okay.
Thinking just very quickly with Andre and the second Thursday there, what if we bumped it to like the third Thursday or something like that? Perhaps that would be a way to think about it. But again, we'll mull it internally.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you for your feedback on that matter. Lots of really good ideas were shared. We're not going to go into detail on everything, but one thing that I'll say to please keep your eyes open for, I'll be sending out an email to the committee and asking you to provide me with specific projects that you might like to see move forward. Of course, we can't guarantee that we're going to do them all, but then we'll share them, and we will go through a polling exercise to really prioritize actual projects as opposed to priorities that you might like to see. So lots of things on the go, lots of exciting projects at the city, but we'd also like to get some more feedback on things that you would like to be working on as a committee as well. So thank you for your feedback and sharing that. In my staff update, I'm also going to talk about some plans for the committee for next year. But with that, I'll just leave it to the committee and ask if there's anything else that you'd like to speak to. You know, we do have all your feedback and we'll be addressing it as we can. But anything else that anyone wanted to share at this time?
Okay. Thank you, Em. We're moving on to item 6, embodied emissions. I'll take that one away. You'll take that one away.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to share my screen here. All right, you should be able to see it. It's not in PowerPoint. I was having some tech issues, so hopefully, is it big enough for everyone to see? I can make it a bit bigger. You're good? Okay, great. So this is something that has been brought forward in some of the feedback from the committee, and it's also something that I've been doing some research on. So you've all had a chance to review this in your agenda package, but I'm just going to lay some foundation. And then this will be what we use as our discussion point for ideas or thoughts that anyone has to share at today's meeting. So just to give you some context, our population in Sault Ste. Marie is expected to grow over the next 20 years. And according to the planning department, we're going to require approximately 4,000 new homes. So traditionally, when we're looking at greenhouse gas emissions, we would look at operation emissions. So looking at things such as energy efficiency on how we can reduce that. And this is, this is addressed in the National Building Code of Canada. But there is another aspect to emissions for buildings that is starting to gain a lot more traction. And this is referred to as embodied carbon or embodied emissions. And this relates to measuring the carbon footprint from harvesting, transporting, and manufacturing the building materials. So really taking a look at the emissions throughout that entire life cycle. And globally, embodied emissions contribute to 11% of global carbon. Lots of exclamation points there. I don't know why that happened. Anyways, so there's a lot of benefits of using building materials that have lower carbon. Specifically, there's been some research done by Natural Resources Canada and the Builders for Climate Action Group that basically shows that there is actually no direct correlation between material carbon emissions and costs. And you also don't have to really change your design all that much to take into consideration using materials that are lower carbon. There's also a business case behind using these materials. They help work us towards building a lower carbon economy and also fostering development of businesses that follow more of a circular economy approach. So for those who aren't really familiar, I've been doing some research into this, and I found that this graphic really takes a better look at calculating embodied carbon. As I said earlier, this takes a life cycle approach, and it looks at the building materials from their extraction to the manufacturing, the transportation, the use of them in the building. So that's really what we've been focusing on, specifically in our greenhouse gas reduction plan, the operations emissions. So looking at measures like energy efficiency, and then taking a look at the end of life emissions. So whether these materials that the buildings were used are going to be recycled, et cetera. So there's been some really great examples of municipalities taking action on embodied emissions, specifically the township of Douro-Dummer, of whom I had a great chat with this week. They've pretty much been the first community in North America to actually launch an incentive program for builders who use lower carbon building materials, it essentially results in a reduction of the building permit cost for the builders. So I'm doing a bit more research into how they actually factored that in. But municipalities are able to create, they have power to create different types of building classes for building permits. And that's what they've done. All of these are hyperlinked as well in case anybody wants to do a deeper dive into them. The city of Vancouver was gunning to be the first community to create an incentive program for embodied carbon, but actually Duro Dummer did beat them to it. And they're very small. They're a small community outside of Peterborough, about 5,000 people. The city of Nelson, BC as well is doing a lot of research into embodied carbon. They haven't gotten to the incentive piece yet, but they're engaging their stakeholders within their community about, especially in the building and the design sector, about, what are they doing? Is there an interest for an incentive program and ways to encourage builders to use lower carbon building material? And the city of Toronto, they have a green standard that they recently updated, effective in April 2022, which will be including information about different tiers as it relates to embodied carbon. So what I've done is I've reached out to the city's chief building official, and we'll be connecting with our local construction stakeholders to start laying the foundation, expressing the interest of the city. I actually have a presentation with the builders next week to just break the ice into this topic and gauge interest. So we're in the very, very early stages of all of this, but I wanted to give a bit of background and open the floor to any discussion, ideas, or interest that anyone might have. And I will add that in the shared resources section of today's presentation, there's a lot of great material in there. If you yourself or someone that you might know is interested in looking at low carbon building materials, there's also great reference for policies on a municipality standpoint that they could look at. So I think I'll leave it there and open the floor for discussion.
Emily, I want to thank you for sharing that information, because the timing is very, very good for me, because I'm in the process of planning a building across the street, a house, shared living. And I'm working with David Ellis, and actually had the chat with Tom Vare with regard to using hemp Crete as a building material. And so there are examples of across the world using this material, which is made out of hemp, which captures carbon, and it's mixed with lime, and it's made like these building blocks, and it's like assembling a Lego home. So it's really interesting. It has a very high R value. One of the project, because it's personal, and also the challenges is as a local experience, and hopefully sharing with the group on a personal level, the challenges and the opportunities to build a building of the future, as I call it. So that's really good. One of the things is that our building codes are not current. So some of these materials are not actually allowed, or perhaps not recognized. So we are, because of the Environmental Sustainability Committee work, I think you've basically opened doors to have that conversation and facilitate the process. So I guess I would call myself a pioneer, hopefully locally, maybe to have the first hempcrete home or something along those lines. So perhaps I can share my experiences as we go along with the project. So it's like a three-year kind of time span. So yes, Dave Ellis is a good friend of mine. He's also a great architect. He's designed a lot of things, and he just finished building a house with insulated concrete. ICF is insulated concrete form, which is has a very high R value, but it's styrofoam and concrete, which are not very good for the environment in the production and also in the disposal site. So he told me, I wish I would have known about this product before I started my house. So it's an interesting conversation, and I'm very happy to be connected with the committee. And and opening those doors at City Hall. So I'll keep everybody posted. And if anybody has any ideas about or knows of other materials that are meets these requirements, I am right now at the planning stage. So this is a very the timing is impeccable. So I'm very happy to be doing this, and I'm very happy that this conversation is taking place. So please, I'm wide open for learning more about this.
Thanks, Andre. Pedro.
Thanks, Donna. Thanks for that, Emily. I just two comments. One has to do with the prediction for, or the anticipation that we'll need 4,000 houses. I mean, we have to think there's two questions there. One is 4,000 based on how we do things currently. So will we build these houses the same way? Will they be individual houses? Will they be apartments? Why do we actually have to build more houses as opposed to using existing infrastructure? Part of the emissions also that we're not considering here is actually the emissions from paving. Once we pave, create more roads, more area for homes, we are basically preventing those soils and that area from sequestering carbon. And we already have a city that is extremely spread out. Another question for communities anywhere around the world is, will we grow forever? Will we want to grow forever? Is it possible to live sustainably and well with a maximum set of population? How do we do that? And then have everyone who lives there, that growth being in terms of economic growth and actually welfare, people living better in terms of quality and not quantity of the population. So these are all questions that we need to think about that are tied to emissions. And and think really carefully if, pave more, build more, use more materials, basically, if that's what we actually want to do and want for the zoo.
Thanks, Pedro. Emily, do we know with what Pedro was speaking to in terms of what does 4,000 mean? And if we don't know, perhaps we could take that back to planning and get some more details about it. It's certainly, I don't know the answer to that either, Pedro. So, and I should. So that's something definitely to look at. And I know you've captured Pedro's other comments. Anyone else want to contribute to this this thought on how we build things differently to reduce excuse me, emissions during the creation of these products or afterwards?
Maybe
Go ahead,
add
Fred.
one point is the, cement may be an intensive and hard to abate sector, but you can also consider embodied carbon in the inputs into the cement can be associated with sequestration. You can put aggregates in there that have carbon capture on them. One of the things that I'm currently investigating is carbon capture on slags to be used in the cement sector. So you end up with a significant amount of carbon embodied in the cement that's used. So there's a lot of different angles to look at this conversation from.
Thanks, Fred. Emily, how do you think, and Travis, how do you think we could best gather what we've heard so far, and perhaps Mark or Jamie, and I see Bhavna's here now. Does anyone else have anything to contribute to this at this time? And how could we best move this forward? It's very timely, it's very interesting, and it could make a big difference. What do you think about how we should go ahead, Em?
So in my conversations with other municipalities who are, pretty much leading the charge on this, it seems that one of the first steps that they've taken is to really engage with their local builder community. One of the things to consider is there's a lot of things, for example, what has been the uptake for energy efficiency in the building community. That's really where we've been focusing a lot on building emissions reduction. So making buildings more energy efficient in the way that they use energy. So has there been a lot of interest in that locally? I think the same could be said even about renewable energy as well. Do we see a lot of uptake regarding renewables, for example, solar panels, what have you, as a form of energy? So we need to, gauge and understand what the taste for that is. And that will also help us in asking, are builders using that material locally? So we're starting with the stakeholder engagement. As I said, I am meeting with the building community with Freddie next week. And then we actually have plans to meet with them again in the spring, where they talk about all of the updates that have taken place to the Ontario Building Code with all of them together. So hopefully by then we'll have a better understanding of where our builders' interest lies. Is there interest for an incentive program? Would people be keen on changing their building materials if they had an opportunity to look at a rebate on their building permit, for example? So we're in those early stages, and I'm happy to report back to the committee once we talk to the builders. This is kind of like our initiating conversation next week, and some more into the new year as well.
Awesome. Jamie.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I support a lot of what you're saying, Emily. I think part of this is going back to these communities who are leading the charge and sort of understanding their lessons learned that they've compiled from what stakeholdering they've done, what roadblocks and barriers they've identified, and what mechanisms they're putting in place to remove those roadblocks, both on like a buyer side and a seller side, I suppose, with the builders actually needing to build. And then I hear a lot of this discussion today from our group, really excited about the types of materials that we can incorporate, or maybe even a community design centered around, or multi-dwelling design, a neighborhood centered around sustainability. I think those are great ideas, and more towards perhaps the execution of how we would execute a plan like this. So I think they're all great things and ideas to capture for sure.
Thanks, Jamie. Bhavna, what are you thinking?
Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Perfect. So some of what Emily and Jamie already mentioned, but I think it's important to look at the whole life cycle of those products. So as Fred mentioned, we also looked quite a bit into the slag carbon capture, but slag has various different compositions of carbon based on the processing it has went through. So we need to start from the very source that they're coming from, including the transportation, how it will get out of the city for the processing plants, then come back into the industrial area or construction or wherever they may be. So I think we also need to collaborate with other regions where the material might be going to, or if they're already using it, how they're working with the whole life cycle of this product.
Thanks, Bhavna. Anything else you wanted to add there?
Can I
Yep, go ahead, Andre. Go ahead.
I just want to, just after Pedro's comments, on a different slant, I totally agree that, first of all, can we create more housing without increasing pavement and increasing the pedestrianization? And in the handout that was with the agenda, and also in the book that I shared with planning, is a parking reform, so that when you eliminate the parking requirement to a building construction, you can actually convert parking lots into residential areas that create a pedestrianized zone. So there's a really interesting conversation, or if you wish, a planning exercise, where looking at the downtown zone, particularly, where you could have change the rules. So developers, you can reduce your construction cost by 25% if you do not have to include the parking requirements to the building. So just changing that rule opens up the door to encouraging densification, and also creating a 15-minute walkable city where a person can live without a car downtown and be within a 15-minute walk every service that they need. So, and I'm really thinking about like the Station Mall South parking lot, St. Mary's River Drive. To me, that would be a perfect place to have what I call a walkable area of development for housing at very different levels. So that's just a thought I wanted to put out there. So Pedro, I'm 100% with your idea there. Completely agree.
Thanks, Andre. Anyone else want to contribute anything further? Mark, you or Eric on, or anyone else that has had another thought because of this conversation, relevant to embodied emissions? No? Okay. Thank you, everyone. Emily's going to take us through her staff update. However, before she does that, I just wanted to take a moment to say that I'm really, really proud of our city council for, and you can see the remnants. I haven't had a chance to tidy up yet. You can see the remnants of budget night. Like there's still, well, there's a few piles here, but there's piles you can't see as well of information about what we went through to establish the city's budget. And I have to say, I'm really proud of my colleagues on city council for making environmental sustainability a priority for us and choosing to truly fund our work with a dedicated position going forward for the community. And I think it's very important, and it signals something that we're taking this seriously, and we're taking it seriously because we're going to put some, I always say what gets prioritized gets funded. And, we had very strong support for that on, I think it was Tuesday night. And I'm happy that we're all of us together are going to continue to work on this and take these great ideas and best practice and whatever. And we're going to make a change. This is going to change our community. And I really appreciate your support. And I appreciate the support of my colleagues that recognize that we have to do things differently, and we're willing to do that. And of course, people in Sault Ste. Marie are, their tax dollars are being used to facilitate that, and so we're going to do the right thing. We're going to do the good things, and I just want to say that before Emily launched into everything she's been doing and what she wants to tell you about and what she wants to hear from you about.
Thanks, Donna. Just going to go and share my screen again. Okay. So we kind of touched upon this a little bit, but one piece that I wanted to talk about briefly was just from an administration standpoint. Just as a friendly reminder, if you cannot attend a meeting for any reason, just shoot me an email or give me a call. We have to keep track of that for quorum purposes. So just wanted to remind everyone of that. We've already talked about our plans for the meetings in 2022. So we'll talk about that internally. We're going to get that into everybody's calendar probably fairly soon, but if we need to change something, we will. But we just like everyone to have that penciled in. So we will be meeting monthly again next year. So one of the things that we would like to do starting next year is an environmental sustainability committee member spotlight. And so this will look like featuring a spotlight on different ESC members. We feel that this will allow everyone to get a chance to know each other, know what different businesses or interests or organizations are doing, and hopefully inspire our community to become more engaged. So our committee, we're very lucky, is comprised of experts in different sectors, both personally and professionally. So if interested, we would like you to feature what it is that you're working on or something that you're interested in, and even put forward an idea for bringing in a different guest speaker. There's a lot of great things happening within Sault Ste. Marie and the surrounding area, and we'd like to showcase that as some of the action that's going on, and of course talk about what the city is doing, but highlight some other projects and actions. So you will be receiving an email from me. We can talk about that as well if anyone wants to speak to that in more detail. But this is a way that we're hoping to really highlight and engage our committee members in more detail, in addition to what I mentioned earlier, which is, reaching out to folks, what projects you'd like to see. And then we'll be having a bit of a ranking exercise via email and a poll to prioritize that as well. So just in conclusion, as I mentioned, the resources that I had shared this week were really related to embodied carbon. Lots of information out there. They're here to access if you like. I do have plans to speak with the Builders for Climate Action Group, their Endeavor Center next week. They're actually working on developing a calculator that builders can use for estimating embodied carbon from different projects. I know that the town of Durodummer is really looking into this in more detail as they try to quantify emissions reduction as part of their sustainable development program for building permit incentives. And yeah, lots of long-winded literature here, but very interesting. And I think it's pretty great to see that the Sioux is looking into this as well. So with that, my update is complete. Nice and short this time around, Donna.
Well, short is good, but you know, detailed is good too. So sometimes it comes to the time of the year where we're in transition on things and so on. All right, that takes us to the end of our agenda for today. Is that correct, Emily?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Travis, anything you wanted to bring forward? I haven't heard you yet, so I just want to make sure I check in with you and see if there's anything from the city's perspective you wanted to share or ask about right now.
No, I mean, I am very excited that we were able to keep Emily on full time. I think she's been doing a phenomenal job, and really appreciate her leadership on this committee. And I think her and I have had an opportunity to speak quite a bit about the committee. And I think on a go-forward basis, looking at the spotlight, I think it's a great opportunity. I know we had a bunch of feedback from people that were looking for more ways to provide their input. And I think that's a great opportunity to do so. Obviously, there's some concerns about the structure of how the committee operates, but we are bound by the rules of Committee of Council. But I think through this new process, it'll really give an opportunity for the committee members to present their ideas, and then we can do a deep dive on them. So thank you.
Thanks, Travis. We do certainly hope that if you don't offer, we're going to ask you to be spotlighted as we go along through the first half of next year. But with all of that being said, and everything we've talked about today, some great things, and Emily's following up on some things again before the end of the year. Is there anything anyone else wants to add today, or anything that you've thought about during this discussion that you want to share before we adjourn for today? No, I see no hands. I see no yeses. Okay. All right. No worries. No, Andre, did I?
Oh, Donna, just quickly, I don't know if this is, Donna, I've been thinking a lot about Stack and its role. And I really believe that what we were doing can be very complementary to what this committee is doing. And I would really like to get going again. I think where we left off, we should start from there. So if you can, I would really like to see that going again.
I actually did have a couple of conversations, Andre, earlier this week, with specifically with regards to that, and I'm happy to. We're working on some ideas, and we'll be back to the group soon with some plans for next year. So thanks, though.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Pedro.
Yeah, just maybe one last comment. I think it's really nice to see this plan, and I'm really happy to see Emily as well continue, because I think we've done quite a bit of awesome work through Emily. One part that I think for next year and for this committee over the years that I see that is really important is economic development, a new way of doing things, and lots of economic opportunity. And so when I think of spotlighting, also perhaps spotlighting companies either currently in the Sioux or that would be interested in moving to this awesome place where we want to do so much change, companies that are invested in using slags, for example, for capturing carbon, or using wood, solar panels, all of these things. I think there's a a huge component of economic development for our region that is tied to this work and leadership. So yeah, this was just a comment.
Thanks, Pedro. Thanks for bringing that up. So to that, spoken at a previous committee meeting, I think it was last month or maybe October, we are working on planning to hold a climate speaker event, and we do have our economic development team tied into that as well. And we're looking at, possibly featuring some companies that, we think might be interested in the Sioux, or even local companies already. So you're exactly right. Economic development is a big part of this. And as I've said many a time, investing in this in climate action can actually help with creating jobs, good jobs, sustainable jobs, but also working on reducing our emissions as well. So lots on the go. I think what I'll do is I will, again, as I've said, I'll be sending an email to the committee, reaching out to you individually, asking you for some follow-up on project priorities. We do appreciate all the feedback that's been given, and we definitely hope to see some of those come into fruition in the new year. So thank you very much for your contributions, everyone.
All right, anything further before we officially adjourn? I don't see anything. Well, happy holidays, everyone. Enjoy, if you're able to get a little break, enjoy that. So much snow is happening. I know we're supposed to get a little rain on the weekend, but for those of us who like to be outside and enjoying the winter and all the great things that brings, have a great time, and we'll be back to you soon with a schedule for next year. I sincerely appreciate all of your contributions and the time that you're taking to share your expertise with us and helping us make a good plan and make some great change happen in Sault Ste. Marie. Take care, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Sam, I don't know if you're still there. Are you able to stop the meeting?